Beautiful. Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here.
And Graham, hi. Hello. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Mr. Graham Coxon.
So good to have you here. It's the second time Graham's been on the show. The first time was in the old studio, which must be 6 years ago? 7 years
maybe
ago?
7 years ago.
Six years ago.
I checked. It says 6 years ago underneath that video.
Okay.
And since then, a lot's been going on. We've got Waeve, The Waeve, should I say, sorry. Graham's band, and also a lot to talk about with Blur. We're going to touch on all of the above. Dan has put together this pedal board, which we can tell the story of. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've had a fun morning so far.
It's been great.
Just mucking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does the thing.
It's working something.
Have we blown something up? Yeah, it's been excellent to be not in my sleepy street where turning an amplifier on is they hear the hiss.
Foreboding.
They hear the hiss of an amp a mile away. So to have some blastage, it's been pretty marvellous. Yeah.
Dialed up a few things. Tried a few loudage devices. It's been glorious.
I'm going to steal the first question right out of the Rick Beato playbook and ask, what have you been working on? What's interesting you on the guitar at the moment?
Getting through gigs without looking too foolish. That's just about what I do. I mean, too foolish. I like looking slightly foolish. I don't mind looking slightly foolish.
But there's a level.
Because I'm not scared
Okay.
of being foolish and making a fool of myself. Because I don't know, it's to do with my guitar playing, my abstract expressionist sort of sonic painting, drip painting, kind of Jackson Pollock approach. Sometimes you hit some glorious moments and sometimes you don't. And I kind of like when things get out of control and I have to fight my way back in a few seconds to where I was I like getting completely lost. And there's lots of pedals on, and so that interests me. I like the sort of the carnage that these and this can do just on their own without you really fiddling an awful lot or imposing yourself an awful lot. And these, and we'll explain about all this business. Well, that increases the jeopardy. So it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So interesting me, I suppose what was interesting me was really getting the last The Waeve album together, and also, I mean, last year doing lots of shows and trying to get through each Blur show unscathed, and which I nearly did, apart from the old thumbnail. And but
you have to tell the thumbnail story now then. So one thing that Graham was trying to pull off during the Blur tour was a full lofted guitar spin, right?
Yeah, because I remember seeing an old bit of footage of The Who, and Townsend has a Strat and he just goes and then goes and just goes bang and grabs the neck whilst it's in full spin. So I thought, well, I've never done that before. So I've got this thing called a mind horn, which Alistair Atkin made. And actually there's a still of it, I think, on the album of the London show. It was Wembley.
Yeah.
And,
the London show.
The London show.
Wembley Stadium, not even Wembley Arena.
And I just sort of went, well, let's go. And I just went, ping, and it went, I don't know, 25 feet in the air. First one, I grabbed it, neck back on, strap back on, fine, excellent. And the next day I sort of misjudged it and it kind of really whipped round. And I thought, gosh, that hurt. And I dropped it and some of the electronics were hanging out. And I looked down and I had this sort of Beatles wing. Oh. My thumbnail had turned, half of it was just sort of out there and the string had just gone straight down. It got caught underneath and just gone straight through like cheese wire. And my thumbnail was just up here, and there's sort of blurred. And I was like, oh, crikey. I went over to Steve. I said, Steve, can you just cut that off, please?
What, your thumb? No, just the nail.
Well,
He's like, oh, sorry, I misunderstood.
no, just the whole thumb. So and he went, oh, Christ. And I was like, yeah, and he snipped it off, and then I'm like, okay. But had it been the late 60s or early 70s, I would have just probably dipped it in a small glass of brandy or something. But none of that is at my side of the stage, of course. But that was it. That was kind of interesting. But amazingly, how it just sort of, it was all right.
Fabulous.
It looked worst.
We will talk a little bit about Blur. If you want to get the sort of full skinny on what happened in 2023 for Blur and all of it, please watch the documentary till the end. It's on Amazon Prime, I believe. It is a superb piece of work, and it will fill in a lot of the stuff so that we don't have to make Graham go through it all today, because we are primarily here to talk about the Waeve. But if we may, Graham,
You can talk about whatever you like.
A couple of Blur questions. Wembley Stadium?
Yeah, man.
Stood there with, what did I see, 2 marshals and something else?
A couple of marshals and a few 4B12s.
How different was the rig now than it was for like classic era Blur, for example?
That's exactly the same amps. Except I don't know why we were trying out some different speakers. I think that's why the black cabinet was there. I've had those racing green cabinets since, I don't know, I think it was 1990, 1991.
Wow.
When Tony Bateman, my got to get you down to Marshall, Gray. Yeah, because there's no amps could kind of manage it. He says, they're great Marshalls, they're even better once you drop them down the stairs. And I thought, okay, well, let's go over there. And I picked up these 2 Plexis, these 59s, and I've had them ever since, and they are fantastic. And even Marshall are freaked out by them because they seem to be extremely louder than any other of those.
Wow.
I don't know why. Maybe they're not, but they say, whoa, these are lively. But I only have I jump them, and I have the treble just below 2, and then is it the normal just below 3? So it's a bit. Even then, I have to put a a Marshall power brake on it, which aren't particularly brilliant, and I knock it back 4, and it's still
really loud
enough for Wembley Stadium. Yeah.
So there was no kind of urge to get everything into digital boxes and in-ears and all of that. It was roughly what it was years ago, right? It
was the same. I think Alex for a bit has had in-ears. Dave gave it a go, but we felt there was such a disconnect, or I did, definitely. I thought, like this is the reason why I never put anything in my ears. Because I can't judge the feel. I can't play with the right dynamism. I don't know how hard. I'm just hitting everything hard, and it seemed like everyone was just hitting everything hard, and there was the subtlety totally went, and there was a proper disconnect. So if some of you are on wedges, doing it the old proper way, the old school way, which I do with Waeve. I mean, a couple of them have ears too. But there doesn't seem to be that disconnect somehow. But Rose and I are just like the olden days, like wedges.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dan and I were watching the doco going, wedges!
Wedges.
So
Bensons. 2 Bensons
Benson and
each.
wedges.
that's properly funny. What was amazing about watching the documentary last night and seeing footage of you guys in your heyday and seeing you guys in Wembley, all the energy was there. You guys, there's a special noise that happens when you guys come together, right?
Yeah.
But there was such a vibe and such an energy. A lot of modern bands could certainly learn from, be inspired by seeing how 4 guys come together and just make this absolutely glorious noise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we were extremely relaxed. We were very relaxed. I have no idea why, because when we've done this before, I've been really nervous. But it was, I don't know whether it's because of our age or the thing of acceptance or, you know, not being afraid to look foolish. But it was mega relaxed. And all of those gigs, it was just like we were getting together to kick a ball around a little bit. And it wasn't a particularly big deal. It felt like fun. But I was levitating, basically, at Wembley. I mean, it was really a kind of a weirdly out-of-body experience, because you go into Wembley in a kind of a small, you know, in a black car, and you go into this concrete sort of set of tunnels, and then you're in the players' dressing room with the cryo baths and all of that sort of thing. And then I think Damon and I went out to do a news piece that they did in the middle of the Wembley Stadium. So we came out of the tunnel. I was like, oh my God, you know, and you don't arrive via the stadium.
Right.
So you don't really see it. Yeah. You arrive straight into the into the concrete blocks of the backstage. So when you actually see it and when you do go on stage, it's pretty crazy. It is a bit mad. And I can't believe how relaxed we were. And actually, I think we did sort of shrink the place. I think it felt to us like the place shrunk.
Wow.
Like it was like a, you know,
still intimate.
A big club.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it felt like that. It was just fun. And that energy, it's like we have to do it. We have to give it everything, really. And sometimes 2 hours of that is mind-blowingly and emotionally, physically and emotionally, very draining. It can be quite hard to do that, but you have to, and regardless of how you're going to feel the next day, and regardless of meniscus tearings and beetle wing nails and general wear and tear, you just have to throw ourselves at it like that. Otherwise it just doesn't, it just sort of happens, because I'm doing this and Damon will come over and start jumping about and looking at me like he's going to rip my head off if I don't jump up and down too. So off we go, boing, boing, boing. And
but the music demands it.
It sort of does. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously a few breaks.
Yeah.
You know, there's to the end where I don't have to sing or anything. I just put a tremolo on and off every now and then. And it's just nice, like, oh, thank God for this. I can just have a little breather then. But yeah, but when it needs it, you've got to do.
What I thought was really interesting was you were saying that, because you had never played Wembley before, even in the heyday of Blur, you'd never played Wembley. And I think it was Alex that says, we were never big enough to play Wembley, and now we are. It's just fascinating that the popularity of the band has never waned.
No, it's not. That's what's odd. And I remember back in the 90s, we were going to do Ali Pali, and we were like, oh, we're not going to fill this. You know, it was kind of like that then. But now, and the audience hasn't changed at all. They're the same age at the front that they were in 1994.
That's brilliant.
And there's a lot more older people at the back that weren't there maybe in the 90s.
They have to be careful of their torn meniscus, I think. That's what
yeah. And
so we had a knee conversation earlier on.
Yeah, the knees were not great in last year.
For all of you.
But it is odd, you know, and from the first warm-up in Colchester right the way actually to the end of the year, one or two of the faces I saw were there every gig, no matter where we went. And saw them at the airport. I was like, you're here as well? It's like, yeah. Like, how are you doing this? It's like, I hassle my dad for some money and just follow us everywhere. And all the Waeve shows too. I mean, I don't know how they do it. Crazy.
Great. It's great that people want to go to gigs.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
What we'll do is we'll do a lovely little segue here from Blur into the Waeve by talking about your guitars. One thing I particularly loved about seeing the footage of those shows was pretty much every shot I saw you were playing a different guitar.
I know, I'm spoiled. 3 different Les Pauls, I think. There was the old Gold Top with P90s, and then there was the new Cherry Burst, and then there's my old Custom. I think I took those along. And then there was the Les Paul... Is it a Custom? if it has hard edges. What's it called? Binding.
There's one that you're playing a lot,
Sunbursty.
which is, I think, the old darker Sunburst one with the gold hardware. That's the one you've had for years and years, is it?
Yeah, I've had that one for quite a long time. I don't play the one I used to play, which was that Butterscotch 52 reissue, because I played that all the time. It's as heavy as a Les Paul, and it's got a really wide neck, that guitar.
Right.
Yeah.
And no wonder I was kind of strong, I guess, in my mid-20s playing that thing. Because when I eventually, after playing that for sort of 7 or 8 years, picked up an old 60s telly, I was like, wow, this is light and it's got a skinny neck. What have I been doing for them? You know, this thing weighed a ton. But yeah, there's the 335, which I've had for ages. I mean, all of these things now are kind of almost vintage guitars. Including, you know, the Marshalls are from 1991 or something like that. And they're all, some of them are, I don't really play much of my really old ones. I 68 telly, but that's what Fender based a sort of a Graham Coxon Telecaster on. But I don't really take that on the road anymore.
But it's funny hearing that telly in the video.
Yeah,
And
Sunburst
the middle
telly.
position of that Sunburst telly is like, wow, it's Graham. You know, that sound. It's
But
amazing.
also the grey guitars and the PJD, so some new guitars too.
Yeah. I kind of, you know, I'm getting on now, so I sort of have to force myself into Strat world occasionally and just see how I get on. And there was a bit of Strat on the new Blur album, but there was also a little bit of this, and there was also this sort of sustaining pickup going on. So I asked Tom to sort of, it was roughly a cross between the Jeff Beck Strat I have and this. I wanted a sort of a Strat to encompass this sort of business.
Yeah.
And but sound like a Strat, because this doesn't sound like a Strat.
And do you play this guitar in the Waeve as well?
Yeah, I've got 3 of these. The one I normally play is black. This is the one that went on the road with Blur, and this is in a Bethnal green.
Of course. Beautiful.
But it's basically the same, except my black one has a little button which kills.
Yeah. When did that start then? The playing the Manson guitars.
When I was doing gigs with the Jaded Hearts Club, which was the Beatles cover band, which then went on to cover all sorts of old soul stuff. Matt said, you know, that I ought to try a Manson, and I had a little
Matt
go.
is in Matt Bellamy.
Yeah, Matt Bellamy. And he said, you know, see what you reckon. And you can have all sorts. His has got, like, you know, you can switch a fuzz pedal on, chaos pads, and all kinds of stuff. It's like it's this great. I had one for a while when I put mine in for a little bit of a repair. And it was kind of, I didn't plug it into anything. It just had lights. And I sort of stuck little people, like a little dance floor, and stuck little people on it. But interesting things, extremely stable. I wanted something modern, you know. I kind of got a lot of, what are they called, boomer guitars? Are they? You know, a lot of a lot of the classic stuff. Les Pauls, SGs, Tellys, a bit of a Strat, 335. You know, all these kind of lovely things. I sort of wanted to see what a modern, like a bit of a modern guitar would be like, and definitely was interested in this Sustainiac thing here, and I can't really live without trems anymore. And it's incredibly they're incredibly stable, and you can like get people in the eyes with the lights.
The lights.
Like Phil Lynott used to do.
Yeah. And it sort of just disappears. It's kind of like playing a telly.
Yeah.
But it's a telly that's been to the gym quite a lot, and it just sort of disappears, and it's got, you know, humbuckers. So I'm quite happy with it, with that sort of sound, and it's sort of set up a bit like a Les Paul. It's kind of everything I like in one place, and I'm really used to all this business now.
Well, let's have a listen.
Let's have a listen to it. Yeah, I'm just slightly enjoying all the diehard telly fans kind of recoiling at everything that's being talked about right now.
I love Telecasters. I do love them. there's a lot of stuff where I'll just go. It's just an interesting thing to play with, and you can sort of solo, I suppose, and just have it on, and then that's the note that you're playing. It will keep going on that note. This is a different sort of harmonic, and that's an octave higher, something like that. But you can just sort of solo like that, and every time you sort of hold a note, it'll introduce some other sort of note into it.
There's a solo on the new Weave that you showed us.
Waeve.
But then,
Yeah.
We said Weave. Maybe this is a good opportunity to explain it. Why is it spelt Waeve? And then there are specific spacings, aren't there? I've seen on the artwork.
Yeah, specific spacings.
What does it?
Well, it's kind of like an A that's joined to the E.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like encyclopedia.
Oh, I see.
But that sort of implies that it should be pronounced the other way. But it's also to do with an old English spelling of C, which is S-A-E, like that.
And you were saying on the first record, a lot of the songs were inspired by
There was a lot of C, a feeling of... It was a pretty woozy time when Rose and I got together to write initially, and trying to figure out what we were interested in, what we were going to sound like. But it was an incredibly freeing experience as well, because you could only hang out with people if you were working. So we would go 2 or 3 days a week, get together in my little spare room. I'd only just moved into this little house, and there was a sort of a room on the bottom next to the hall. I said, it's just here, so if you need to escape, it's really easy. No, but we were just sat there. I said, well, what are we had no audience. We had no expectations. We had no record label. We were completely free to just do whatever we wanted to do. She had great taste in music. I had no worries there. And it turned out had an excellent feel for just coming up with things on the piano after I'd come up with, typical guitar players, 4-chord progression. And I'd say, take it somewhere else. Like that Over and Over song. And the chorus is her just taking it somewhere else. And that's what we enjoy. We began to enjoy taking the songs completely somewhere else eventually. And that that led to a lot of augmentation of the structures and everything like that, which sometimes had to be chopped back. And then we just used what was lying around, because if you've got a computer, you've got a few guitars, you've got a bass, you've got a MIDI keyboard, and she had this sort of Casio organ thing, then you can do anything, really. And I said, well, I've got a sax in the cupboard. She's like, well, yeah, get the sax out. So that became a sort of an intrinsic sort of part of the sound too. And also the idea of the British countryside, the British coast, the whites of the land, the elementals and the undine, the sort of this idea of a sea spirit, water spirit, and that song Undine, about the old-fashioned idea of a young man saying goodbye to his sweetheart because he's going off to sea, but that sweetheart is actually takes him out and drowns him. And they both...
We've all been there.
Sea songs are just the best, aren't they?
They basically, she goes, nah, actually, come with me. It's really nice.
Yeah.
And he does. And then they both live forever under the sea. So, yeah, it's a sort of a woozy feel. So hence a little more, the concept sound-wise for me is for Waeve, is a little further away from the Blur stuff, really, which was Marshalls and Rats and a bit of digital delay, maybe a touch of flanger for Girls and Boys, but not an awful lot more. So the whole idea of searching for a bit more of a wooziness would be, well, going into modulation, echoes, having a cleaner sort of sound.
I like that.
Which is terrifying, when you're used to just flipping great Marshalls behind you, and wondering really where to go. So today's been brilliant because I've been scratching. I'm having known I'm coming here for quite a number of weeks. They've been the longest weeks of my life. No, not really. But just wondering, what am I going to do for a flipping album? I'm so unprepared. You know what I mean?
Because it's a complete change of
big,
headspace.
wide, cleans. Yeah, it is. It is.
And therefore that means a different sonic space, and that perhaps explains the vibrato and this search for a different kind of amp sound. What about playing? How does it? I met Graham a couple of times now and had the pleasure of talking at length about certain things. And what you get the impression of, excuse me, Graham, is an artist who is very deeply connected with the connection between seeing a vision and creating it as music. Yep. And sometimes when you have to explain that, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But I'm going to ask you anyway. So when you're you're thinking about the Waeve and when you're writing, are you consciously in a different headspace guitar-wise, or does it just evolve how it evolves?
It just evolved. Both Rose and I were both kind of shocked, really, at how sort of easy. It wasn't easy, for a while it was extremely stressful, to be honest, having to see her all the time. And as the music developed and our feelings for each other sort of developed during the making of it. But everything seemed like it's the same thing, whether it's Blur or whatever, really. There's something that the song, it's whispering to you what it needs, and you just have to listen. And often a lot of that development would happen weirdly in my sleep. Sorry, rattling about. The worst thing about it is the earworms when you're recording. All at every sort of waking hour, that flipping song is in there, and there's a bit missing. So that earworm is going, the song is going around. You go to sleep, and then suddenly in the morning, your mind has furnished you with that missing bit.
How long do you have from when you wake up to when you can get it down?
Get it down
before it's gone.
Well, quite often. I mean, sometimes I'll sing things into my phone and then I won't be able to understand them.
Right.
Sometimes it's with the second record that's imminent. That will be, writing a few things. Or just playing a few things on acoustic guitar to a 6-month-old baby, and going, oh, that's quite nice, and then thinking about a song that needs something, and then that happening very early in the morning, normally before the brain has woken up properly and has started to impose its, starts to tell you how you're. It's organising itself, and you want to beat it, get a few things in. But I think the songs do tell you what they sort of need, and also I didn't want to smother it in. A guitar can come with a lot of baggage, and it can come with a lot of sort of masculinity sometimes, and I didn't want to just polyfill all the gaps full of guitars. So I think having a cleaner sort of approach where keyboards can be in there, rather like the last Blur album, really. I trod carefully because there was sort of electric pianos and all sorts of things like that. So what I wanted to do was to be complementing all of those sounds, and with the Waeve as well. There's pianos, there's sort of string arrangements, there's saxophones. The last thing we need is like in everything, and make that
your
good
sax playing on the album.
Make that. You got to make a nice runway for the aeroplane of Rose's voice, or whatever it is, to land, or my own to land on, and it's got to sort of communicate somehow. This kind of strange. That's strange. We just built this funny world for ourselves after a time when we both felt particularly kicked about by the world, So.
Before we get into a bunch of sounds, just one more question on that inspiration thing. You were saying the song kind of tells you what it needs. Is that a sense that you developed over years, or was it always there? Like when you would start writing songs for Blur, for example, did you learn to recognise it over the years, or has it been the same?
I think that's a thing that develops along with your own ways of playing. I think that I almost, with Damon, you have to sort of know what he's singing about before he knows, because he's got to somehow communicate. He hasn't written the blooming lyrics, and he won't for ages. So you've got to figure out basically what the song is, and make sure that that's going to be right for whatever he's going to say, I guess. And I suppose that just becomes a sort of weird. I'm just an intuitive. I'm really untechnical. I can't sit. That's all I have. I sort of play everything to the song, to what the song needs, and I think I'm just very sensitive about with other people and about what maybe they need to I don't know, create that place where they're going to be comfortable in. I think I do that with Rose too. I mean, I hope so. But I think that's just something that happens after a while. I don't think I always had that. I think the whole idea of Blur was all pretty full on. It was like sawing a piece of, it was all like quite hard, hitting and squeezing and really hard and all
doing
tense.
Awesome back rolls.
Doing all of that.
Back rolls,
and sort of like...
wicked stuff.
But now I think I like to play... not better, but slightly differently. I do like to play... I've always liked to play melodically. And I've always liked to have naughty notes. And I think if I knew all my scales properly, I wouldn't do so many naughty notes. I think sometimes you hit them well, sometimes you don't. It's a bit like football, like I've said before. It's like sometimes a note is just awful. But I'm lucky because I've played like that for so long that I normally will... It normally
lands in a place for it.
Yeah, it normally lands okay, and then I figure out what to, or let the guitar do something, and then I figure out how to get out of it or how to further what it's trying to do itself. So
I've just got one more question.
It's like automatic writing.
Come on.
Yeah, sorry. Your soundtrack work that you've done, and there's a series called End of the World. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
And your work on that was just wonderful. But now when I listen to your music and when I go back and listen to older stuff, you really do paint a picture. And I know because you're also a visual artist as well. I'm continually astounded at how the image, listen to your music and the image just rises out of nowhere. Is this something that, how do you even begin to develop that?
I don't know.
That's always just been there.
I think that's been there. I think I love words. I hate cliche. So I've got to find my own way of saying things. I can't, buzzwords and this and that. And although the odd cliche, I think musically is nice to plonk into a weird place.
If used deliberately.
Yeah.
And I often do that. But with words, I'm very aware that I should have my own kind of weird language, which I kind of always have had anyway, because it's fun. It's fun to use words, and it's a kind of a weird responsibility. But you can say anything you like in songs, and you can be as obtuse and shy about stuff, or you can be as straightforward as you like. And I like the sort of some of the straightforwardness in some of the Waeve stuff, even though at the time of writing it, that first album, some of that straightforwardness was flipping scary as hell, because it was a bit like, well, how's she going to react to this? And basically saying exactly how I feel here. It's like, whoa, that's kind of frightening. And then there would be a sort of a return, like a picture consequences or the writing consequences. But I think that approach to, I suppose it's just sort of, it's sort of creative. I suppose I'm not really, I approach saxophone and singing. Maybe saxophone is singing without any words. That's what it is. It's like a lyricless sort of singing, and I do like singing, though I'm not that great at it. But I'm getting more confident at it and sort of changing my voice and sort of owning my voice in different ways, or sort of acting a little bit through it. But I think my approach to sax playing, singing, and guitar playing is all the same. I think
All comes to the same place.
Yeah, I think it's the same.
Really beautiful.
It's exactly the same thing. And even if I get an organ sound up, it's still seat of the pants. I still don't really know what I'm doing, and it's to do with how the notes affect you, rather than whether they fit or not.
That's great.
There's a great courage in it as well.
Yeah,
just
definitely.
going with it and having the courage to go with it, getting a good response, and then that becomes a loop, and you realise it's going to work.
And because you don't know the outcome when you head into it, you don't know where you're going to end up.
Yeah,
and that's where that courage is, and it's just wonderful.
It's kind of it's sort of a thrill. It's kind of like. It's not safe. It's you can be falling on your face.
Safe? Was it ever? Rock and roll was not meant to be safe.
And so many times I've made the most awful mistakes. But sometimes it's kind of like for a second life changing and a glorious moment.
That's brilliant. So good.
Sometimes.
And life changing for about 50 million other people
there you go.
as well. But let's
go.
not dwell on that. How did we get here then?
So when this was, I'm trying to remember when I did this first board for you. Was it a couple of years ago? Yeah, I think your daughter was 2 months old or something.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was at the end of the year.
Yeah. And
2022.
You'd recorded the album, and you were just doing some interviews, about to go and do your stuff, and you wanted a board done. So I had done a board for you previously for some other projects and stuff you were doing. This was specifically for the Waeve. We've moved a few things around today because new album coming out and some different sounds. So we've settled on the Hamstead. We had a couple of other amps we were trying. They all sounded great. Pedal platform and a nice stage volume. This thing sounds flippin' brilliant and really works with the guitars that you've got.
Yeah.
I guess we should start looking at gain stages. So some things that we've had on here before: Fallout, Cloud, and the Red Muck. So
which are set mega loud right now.
Yeah, and which is a glorious thing. So can we have a listen to how you use these?
Well, they're sort of. I sort of use them as a sort of a lead sort of device thing. So if like there's a gosh, how much slap is that? Aha, that's a little much maybe. So there is things like this will kind of probably use this too, and it's kind of that level has gone down. Sort of it's like frippiant. And
Chronicle.
You can do it with the fuzz. We added the vibe, the retro vibe, for a specific reason from something that came along on the new record, which again uses the Sustainiac, but that will sustain sort of. So you can do woozy ghost stuff. But what I was really into was that whole thing of the vibe and the fuzz together. Because it's just great fun.
That sliding up note that Graham played there using the wang bar is the beginning of the solo. In fact, was that the whole solo?
Yeah,
pretty much from a track from the new The Waeve record. And what's the name of the record, by the way?
That song.
Yeah.
City Lights is the album,
Yeah.
but that song is Song for Eliza May, which is about our little one.
Ah,
Which seems like an appropriate way to start.
yeah.
But
It's
Waking
not,
up every
it's
morning.
not all, you know.
but you played us the track
it
earlier.
does get a
and it's
little
like,
dark. You know?
and it just the tension that it just creates with that sound and the way you come up on the wang bar there is flipping brilliant.
I don't know whether that was really coming through as much, so maybe the fuzz was the wrong choice. But yeah, I mean, it may have been this one that I used on that, because I think we were hearing that a little bit. Or is that on the wrong thing? No, but yeah, that's sort of. I mean, it's quite Hendrixian, I suppose. And again, it's got this. I don't know whether it fits, but it was a sort of a strangely electric folk,
Yeah,
sort of series of notes.
bit angular.
Yeah, and kind of a little incorrect,
Just going to tilt that
which
down a little bit.
I like. So these sorts of capabilities of that are important for me. The sort of drive things to have a general good sort of tight, punky, chuggy sort of sound, which we were doing pretty good on everything. See, I mean, the headroom on that is amazing.
Yeah.
Because when I went to the blues driver and within the angry driver, that can come up a bit, can't it?
Yeah.
So, there's an awful lot which I have wanted for years, but didn't quite know how to sort of get, really.
One thing that has been talked a lot about lately is this pedal, the old Boss graphic equalizer, and I love how you're using it. It's so everything is cut, right, except for there's an 800 hertz, and you're just kicking this in a certain part of the song, it's like almost like the cocked-wah thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And can we just hear that, because it's just such a great sound?
Yeah, it's a something up there, or someone up there. It's on the first record. So it comes in. So it's got a little bit of a drive.
Yep. That needs turning up.
Sorry to get me heel in there.
that's
Nearly
good.
break your finger.
It's good.
So it does that. I don't know why. That's coming from somewhere in my teenage, from some sort of cheap sounding weirdo punk stuff.
It could
I'm not
equally
quite
be Mick
sure.
Ronson, couldn't it?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
kind of-
completely.
I mean, it's sort of, it might be coming from, nag for instance. It might be nag, 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 or Devo, or yeah. But a lot of that, or Subway Sex, you know, any of this stuff, or Chrome. There's a lot of. I'm not saying they're cheap and nasty as groups. They're fantastic, sort of punk bands, really. But that sort of sound, I sort of am interested in a little bit of the sort of industrial, I suppose, which is odd in a band like Waeve, because I suppose the first record was quite countryside-y, I suppose, in that way, and the next record ends up, I think, back home, but goes through a little bit of a stressful trip round the old city. So it's grumpy at times, but it has some really lovely moments. Really, really happy with it. But it seems odd to be making that sort of industrial sound and then making something that wouldn't be, would seem quite at home on the old grey whistle test, and it's actually quite bucolic. You know, that you could sort of dance around in a barn to, in a way.
It's interesting, the discussion we've had about the Waeve so far might have had you thinking that the music is kind of softer and more laid back, and in part it certainly is. Some of the sounds we've heard so far, you know, would be good bedfellows for Blur, because it's aggression, it's attack, it's all of that stuff. But there are a great deal of melodic moments in the Waeve, and much more, shall we say, gentle textures. Yeah. Could we have a look at some of those, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, there's the really woozy kind of sounding stuff, which I was really, really, really into, and where I would sort of. Things like that, a bit more, sort of more. What I love about Phases and the Echo is the sort of watery, the watery. You know, both we're sort of very, very typical Pisceans. I'm the 12th of March, she's the 13th of March, so 15. We're sort of. So we like a bit of the old watery sounds, and also, I mean, kind of some quite old-fashioned sort of noises. You know, it's kind of 50s B-movie kind of sounds, isn't it? But I love big, wide, clean sounds. It sort of sounds, you know, it's sort of old fashioned, but you still can't get over the fact that it's sort of a beautiful, almost cinematic, and very like romantic. It's a very romantic sort of sound, that sort of reverb, whether it's played or whether it's you know, spring, or it's sort of extremely pleasant.
Now, there's a lot of talk about creativity with your guitar playing. Man, your time is unbelievable.
Time?
Yeah.
Oh,
your
that's nice.
Sense of rhythm is just beautiful, because you're a drummer as well, right?
Yeah.
And you played I know you played drums on the first album. You're playing drums on the second album as well?
Yeah, with tonsillitis. I'm not blooming. I'll never
Is that
forget
a new
that.
plug-in or something?
I'll never forget that. Yeah, and like 50 takes of a saxophone and vocals with tonsillitis, which gave my voice a richness. But I don't want it again. Yeah. So yeah, the drum. I love playing drums, and I wanted to get a good drummer in, but Rose was like, "No, I like how you play it." So I did the drums on both records too.
How much does that inform your guitar playing? The reason I ask is because when I hear, a bunch of, thinking back to Blur specifically, and so much of what you do that sets up the mood for the songs. But yeah, you really drive that, like, it's almost, Alex and
Dave.
Alex and Dave are great, but it's almost you're driving that rhythm section as hard as anything.
I think that is my job live to do that.
Right.
And that's why I have to have an absolute connection with Dave. And I don't worry about Alex so much because he's over there. I really have to be seeing Dave. Cymbals in the way. No, I have to see him.
Right.
And get in all locked in with him. And that's fun too. We're putting faces at each other. It's not all like, grim-faced. But there's nothing better than being inspired as well by a drummer live.
And who's the drummer in the Wave?
Tom. And he is a great drummer too. He is an absolutely fantastic drummer, and he really, really gets me going. He knows how to do it. He knows how to do it.
So
and we've only been playing for a bit.
Yeah, right.
I mean, his the fills he does. He's fantastic. I know that his timing is absolutely bang on. I know that if I do launch, that
when you land,
when I plan hitting the first beat of that, but he's going to be totally there, and that's really a great feeling.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think really all the driving thing with that is just listening to the jam, and it might be things like the Buzzcocks. It might be all of that old rock and post-punk in the late 70s. Maybe that's. I know a lot of people don't always like that, or the ruts, this sort of sense of urgency. I've always really loved that, that kind of sort of that sound. I don't know why, but I definitely I find it exciting. I'll never not do it, but I do like messing around with all these more painterly, sort of more watercolory as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
we talked about the phaser a little bit earlier, and the rotor vibe. The delay thing's interesting. So we had the when you put the slap on, it was this just awesome short, like almost like a roomy reverb slap sound. Are we using the Maxon for that, Dan?
we are.
So what's the delay llama being used for then?
The long, trippy delays.
It's
so beautiful.
Can we listen to the two?
It's all both together,
or just the difference, perhaps?
Or like, and if we were to put. I'm like trying to create some otherworldliness. And also really hideous. love it when it gets out of control and I'm having to fight my way back because flipping it, this next, you know, and getting involved with all of those sort of sounds for me is so, I love, that's what I love about this.
It's fearless. It's just, it's, you launch and you're there and it's, man alive.
It's something that's dawned on me during our chat today, you know, whether you're talking about chucking the guitar up in the air and spinning it around, or when you were talking earlier about launching, you know, up in the air and as you hit the deck, Dave's going to be on it or Tom's going to be on it. It strikes me that your guitar playing is totally physical. So here we are, and you're manipulating the trem, you're using devices on the instrument, you're reacting to the sound coming out of the amp, and that's all happening right through to, and I'm not making light of it, rolling around on the floor. It's all part of the physical connected experience of this inspiration. And it's to sit here on stools and recreate it is kind of impossible, right? Because you haven't got a kit and a bass amp blaring in your ears or whatever. But it's that idea of physicality. And it's just struck me that is what is not in so much music at the moment. And I don't mean to get into a moan about it, but the physicality of it it's infectious, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with The Waeve, having done loads of shows, that is really starting to become a bit more of a thing with it. That sort of physicality with the fantastic drummer and a bass player who's great. And then, we've got the two saxophones happening and then, Rose will get up and just dance and just thrash and flipping tambourine to bits. And then it's a bit like you have your moments during a set where you just open it all up and you just like give them audience. And we've been supporting people, so they're not our audience. They're sort of like, they think we're nutters. But, we obviously do seem like we're kind of crazy with this kind of weird electric folk, prog rocky kind of Fairport Convention meets King Crimson kind of thing. And then they're sort of like, and they can't, it's an interesting thing to see people's faces.
I can't
when they get
come
that.
to a gig. I can't wait to come
when
to a
they
gig.
get that row. And, because there's extremely beautiful moments, very gentle moments, very romantic moments. But then, that you can't have that without the terror and of just everyday living in the city, the paranoia, the sort of jealousy and the pain, the emotional agony that is there every second of the day. That's what I don't know what kind of noise you're meant to make.
I think you make it.
That's right.
You make it.
I try to do my best
through you
to get that across.
I think the only pedal we haven't heard is the Ditto, isn't it?
The Looper.
We've heard everything else.
Now the Looper.
Yeah, perhaps,
That
Graham.
involves me standing on the table.
Perhaps you could play us out using the Ditto.
Yeah.
If that's cool.
Okay, I'll try and do that sort of
That was really beautiful.
that little section.
Yeah. Massive. Thank you for coming and hanging out.
God,
man. It's
pleasure.
So great to see you again.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just to,
It's been
to
great.
hear you do your thing. It's so
Thanks
great.
for giving me the time to fiddle around and be a pain and ask questions about what actually does that do on a phase. I've never known. Yeah, tell me.
You're always welcome,
all
man.
that.
You're
Thank
always
you very
welcome.
much.
Coffee's always on.
Please do listen to 2023's Blur record, The Ballad of Darren.
Beautiful.
There is a deluxe edition out now. And please also, when it comes out on the 20th of September, buy City Lights
Yeah.
by The Waeve, or listen to it on your favourite streaming device. And open your mind.
Yeah, indeed. Brilliant. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Cheers.